Okay, we're here with another Ovadia Heart Health Telemedicine live stream, and today I am thrilled to be joined by PD Mangan, a very knowledgeable science-based guy. He's a microbiologist. He's got science background, and he's an expert in the field of fitness, nutrition, exercise, resistance training. And you wouldn't know it by looking at his pictures. He's 70 years old, and he's got a physique that any 30-year-old would be proud of. So I'm really looking forward to diving in and hearing what PD has to say about a bunch of things that really pertain to our audience. Before we get going, I need to put up our medical disclaimer. Just want to let everybody know that's joining this live stream that any information that we talk about today is for your educational and informational purposes only, and this is not a substitute for professional advice or treatment by a licensed healthcare professional. If you're advised to seek the care of a qualified doctor, and if you'd like to make Dr. Ovadia or our medical team your professional practitioner doctor, just reach out to us, and you can do that at team@ifixhearts.com. And with that, we will get on our way. PD, you have like close to 200,000 followers on X, and I got to say, it's well deserved. You really provide a constant feed of useful information. So I recommend that anybody who hasn't already followed PD, you can go on X, and it's Mangan 150, right? Mangan 150.
That's right. Yeah.
But PD, you weren't always fit, and I've heard you tell stories about being like a 97-pound weakling. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but what were things like before? How did you get to the point where you made some sort of a conscious change? And then how did that lead to where you are today, the expert that you are?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so earlier in life, where I'm talking about like a few decades back, I was in pretty good shape. Not in the sense of well muscled, that sort of thing, but I did a lot of running. And so, I've run a couple of marathons in my life, nothing spectacular, but, I was doing it. I was out there every day running and, doing the weekend long distances and this kind of thing, go out and run 15 miles on a Saturday or something. So I was doing that a long time. And then I came down with chronic fatigue. This was when I was in my mid 40s. And then I had to deal with this for a long time, basically 11 years. And so I went to see a lot of doctors about it, and nobody could help me. Maybe let me excuse me, back off from that a little bit. Yeah, I got a little bit of help, but basically the fundamental problem was not solved. And so at some point, I kind of figured that if I was ever going to get over this, I would have to figure it out for myself. And so I started diving in to researching it and so on. And I figured a few things out. And then I started feeling better. And at some point, I decided, well, gee, maybe I can lift some weights. So something I had done sporadically in my life, never anything terribly serious. So I had an old barbell, and I just started doing that, and it was pretty hard at first. But before long, I decided, well, I'm going to need bigger weights. And so I joined the gym, and then put on, I gained about, I probably gained 30 pounds in the course of a year, hopefully most of that muscle. And at that, I had told myself way back when that if I could ever overcome my health problem, that I would write something about it, write a book about it. So at that point, I decided, well, I guess I overcame it, so I'm going to write about it. And so I did. That was my first book. And then after I did that, I thought, well, what's next? I guess I'll write another book. So I did. And so I kept writing. I've written half a dozen books, and then, had a website and everything, and got on Twitter, now X, and started posting. So, so I had a big turnaround, based largely on my own research, which was one thing that I found was, one thing I've talked about a lot is that what you read from mainstream health sources is not necessarily really what the science says, or it's at least a lot more subtle, or, and some mainstream media and mainstream health media, I guess we could call it. They exaggerate a lot of things, come to simplistic conclusions. And when you actually dive into the literature and you find out, well, gee, it's not so simple. There is a lot more to it. So, that's how I got into this. And then, about 6 years ago, I started, coaching health and fitness. So that's what I've been doing. And that's how I got where I am now.
Okay, that's fascinating, and I mean, I've got to emphasize, you've posted before and after pictures on your feed, and they're dramatic. And I think the reality is that a lot of people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and beyond don't think that that is realistic. And I'd like your thoughts on that, because like you literally did it, and tell me, like, is it magic, or is it something that is not achievable? You just posted a really interesting thread yesterday of famous people throughout the years, which maybe you can elaborate on, but you posted pictures of just, famous male actors. I think they were all male, whose bodies are not phenomenal by any sort of bodybuilding standards, but these people were all relatively fit and had but just talk to me about the possibility of going from 50 and lethargic, out of shape, and poor fitness, overweight, poor muscle, and doing something similar to what you've accomplished.
What I've accomplished is something, in my opinion, that anyone can do. It really, at least in one sense, it isn't that hard. The training is hard, yes. So as I'm sure you know, and maybe we can talk more about this if you want, but I train only, less than 1 hour a week. Okay. But that 1 hour a week is basically 2 30-minute sessions. It's hard, right? It is, as the old school bodybuilders used to say, no pain, no gain. There is a lot of truth to that. So it is hard. However, it is only an hour a week. And I think that anyone can find an hour a week to do this. Hopefully they can. I mean, most people, I'm sure, are watching more than an hour a week of television. And so it's not hard to find the time. So I don't think that what I've done is anything really out of the ordinary that anybody can't do. You just have to want to do it. And so there's the training part, which, as I said, 1 hour a week approximately. Eating right is also very important. I'm continually surprised by the number of people that think they're going to burn their body fat off in the gym. It doesn't work that way. Exercise really doesn't burn all that many calories in the scheme of things. And exercise also makes you hungry. And so if you don't get the diet right, you can just exercise all you want, but you're typically, 90% of the time, you're just going to eat any more than you burn. Lots of studies confirm this. Randomized controlled studies confirm this, that exercise alone is a very poor method of weight loss. So getting your body fat under control is all about what you eat. It's just totally about what you eat. And then as far as fitness and putting on muscle, maybe this is an obvious point, but as far as those fitness and muscle, how hard you train is going to be the big factor there. And then you want to, of course, support that with proper nutrition. So I don't think that I do think that anyone could do this. I certainly don't have spectacular bodybuilding genetics or anything like that. I was probably born to be a distance runner in that sense, maybe not even that. I mean, as far as athletic ability or capability, I really don't have any. I've never played sports, never did anything like that at all. I was always, the proverbial last guy picked for the team. So I think that anyone can do it if they know how and if they want to do it. It's as far as eating right goes, yeah, it's again, you have to want to do it because the obesogenic food environment is everywhere out there in the environment. You can't just default to that. You got to go your own way. You got to want to do it. You got to be willing to do what others won't do. You got to be willing to forego the pizza and the donuts and all this kind of thing when everybody else is face down in them. And so, yeah, I just don't think what I've done is anything extraordinary. And one thing that I'm trying to do on my X feed is show people that, yeah, you can do this. So it's just a matter of wanting to. As far as those you mentioned the photos that are posted about the male, entertainers and actors and everything that had sort of, decent but not extraordinary physiques. Yeah, and they do that because they want to, and it's important to them. And so, yeah, they do it. Those aren't athletes or bodybuilders or anything like that. Yeah, so anybody can do it if they're willing to put in an hour a week of work and to focus on eating right.
So tell me a little bit. I think a lot of people listening are probably, I know from my experience coaching at Ovadia Heart Health, talking to patients, a dozen or more per week. It's very common for men and women in their 50s and 60s to be dissatisfied with their current level of muscle mass and strength. What is it that you're doing in these 2 30-minute workouts? Can you give a brief overview and what is entailed in a way that a new person could understand what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So I subscribe to the method of high intensity training. High intensity training has a lineage that goes back a few decades, maybe more than that, because there were some old school bodybuilders who used to train that way. But basically, Arthur Jones, who was the inventor of Nautilus exercise equipment, he's kind of the father of high intensity training. And then Mike Menser, who was a bodybuilder, basically at the time of, he's competing against Arnold and those kind of people, made it a little more popular. He was a big advocate of it. So what is high intensity training? High intensity training, the high intensity part does not refer to the amount of weight that you are lifting. It refers to the amount of effort you are putting into the exercise. So the effort has to be high intensity. What it means in practical terms is you're going to do an exercise. Okay, let's say you're going to do a chest press. And what you're going to do is go to failure, momentary muscular failure, where you cannot move that bar anymore, no matter how hard you are trying. So what this does is recruit muscle fibers sequentially and takes them to failure. And so you get to maximum effort. High intensity training, at least in most versions, also means you're only going to do one set. Okay, because you're going to get 95% or more of the benefit of your exercise from just doing one set. If you do more than one set, you might get marginally more benefit, but it also eats into your recovery time. Recovery is very important. Recovery is a very underrated factor that hardly anyone talks about. You need to recover. And this is, why I'm always, kind of astonished at, when people say, "Oh, well, I'm in the gym 5 days a week for an hour and a half at a time," or something like this. And I think, how in the world can you do that? Because I certainly can't. I've had, one fellow asked me one time, well, basically the same thing. I'm in the gym 4 to 5 days a week for an hour and a half at a time. Is that too much exercise? What I said to this young guy was, if you're training with enough intensity, you should not be able to be in the gym that much. You need recovery. So basically, there are only about 5 different movements in strength training, right? So in theory, you could do basically just 5 exercises, and as long as you go to failure, then you're going to be conditioning your whole body. So that's how high intensity training works. You get into the gym, you train hard, and then you leave and don't come back until you're ready for another session. One thing, you often hear in fitness circles, like on X, for example, people will say, well, go to the gym even if you don't feel like it. And I think, for a lot of people, probably most people, that's pretty good advice. But for people who like to exercise, that's not good advice. If you want to exercise and, you're ready to go to the gym and you're just not feeling it, you're feeling like you need more recovery time, then you should take recovery time. You should listen to what your body's trying to tell you. You're just not going to get good results if you're going to go into the gym not ready to do a hard workout. So the whole recovery piece is very much part and parcel of high intensity training. Mike Menser, when he was training for Mr. Olympia, was training like an hour and a half a week or something like that, when his competitors were in the gym hours and hours a day. So if you train hard enough, you don't need high volume, high frequency, long workouts, anything like that.
Fantastic information. Let's see. Could you, I know you've shared many times your sequence of exercises. You'll post what you did. Could you just basically run through what it looks like for you? And I know as you say that, we will acknowledge that there's some individuality involved and there's different people may be in different places, but just out of curiosity, since you're getting such good results with your 30 minutes twice a week, what do you do when you go to the gym?
Right. So basically, you want to do the large compound hard exercises first in your workout. So whether it's something like deadlifts or a leg press or squat, something like that, more than half of your muscle is in your lower body. So anything that's going to be using your lower body, like a deadlift or a squat, is going to be extra hard. And so you want to do that first. As far as everything else, if you do 1 to 2 exercises per muscle group, that's all you need to do. So for example, I'll do a chest press and I'll do a set of dips. Okay, so that covers the chest muscles. I'll do an overhead press and or lateral raise. That covers the shoulders. I will do a pull down or chin ups that covers the lats, the back, muscles on the side of the back. I'll do a seated row, which covers the muscles more in the middle of the back and upper back. Let's see, did I leave anything out? So we've got legs, chest, shoulders, back, right? So there's your 5 basic exercises. Then most people will want to do other things too. For example, it's relatively, like your calf muscles, for example. You kind of got to do a separate exercise for them because they're, doing a squat or a leg press is not really going to do much for your calf. So I'll do a calf raise, not every session, but I do that exercise. Triceps and biceps. So, most men will want to have well-defined biceps and triceps. So you can work those separately, even though in a lot of those exercises, you are working your biceps and triceps, like for example, a front grip pull down, you're pulling down like that. You're getting a lot of biceps work there. Shrugs is another one I do. So that's the traps, the trapezius muscles. I guess, a long time ago, 10 years ago or something, somebody said my traps were underdeveloped. So I've been doing shrugs ever since. So that's basically it. I do a full body workout every time. The exercises themselves are sometimes different. Like I might do a hack squat on a hack squat machine, for example, or, a pull down one workout, chin ups in another workout, that sort of thing. But it's still working my whole body each time.
Tell me what an individual set looks like in terms of both the number of repetitions and the speed at which you pull the weight towards you and the speed at which you allow the weight to go away from you.
Right. So I do slow repetitions. Okay. So they're not, there's a so-called super slow, which I don't do, but my repetitions are much slower than most people. So it's, on average, a cadence of maybe 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down. And so, when you're doing that, you're using no momentum, you're using all muscle. It's much more difficult. Because it is more difficult doing slow reps, it doesn't require as much weight. So it's safer. The number one priority in resistance training is to avoid injury. Okay, that's what you got to put top priority above everything else. You don't want to go into the gym and do a bunch of stupid things like, you can go on YouTube and see videos of people doing really dumb things in the gym and getting hurt. People can have life-changing injuries doing that. So safety is the number one priority. Going slow is more effective and safer, and it is more difficult. That's what you want. You want it to be more difficult because hard training is what builds muscle. Muscles won't build themselves. It requires a high degree of effort to build muscle. A big mistake I see many people making in the gym is they simply don't train hard enough. I see a lot of people just kind of moving weights around and this sort of thing. Another mistake I see in the gym is not with, I'd say most people, but let's say your typical gym bro. They want to lift heavy and then they use any means necessary to move that weight around. That is not what strength training is about. It's not something you do to the weights. It's about effectively loading your muscles and giving them the stimulus they need to get stronger and bigger. And you don't necessarily need super heavy weights to do this. Most guys in the gym, in my opinion, would be a lot better off lifting less weight and using much better form and going slower. I use slow reps, and I also target getting to failure on the exercise in something like 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so I
Okay.
choose a weight that will get me to failure in 1 to 2 minutes. It's if you see what a typical bodybuilding routine is something like they'll do 3 sets of 10 reps. They're usually pretty fast reps, and then they'll rest maybe a minute, maybe longer in between sets. Do another set. If you do 1 set to failure in 1 to 2 minutes, you will be doing more work than the typical 3 sets of 10 sloppy reps that most people are using. I mean, I've seen people really literally complete 3 sets while I was doing my one.
One point I want to just sort of go into what you're talking about, because I know exactly what you're talking about with the speed. If I do a set of, say, 8 reps on bench press, the traditional way that I was taught to use a bench press, and I was taught mainly by watching probably other people that knew about as little as I knew. The failure point is like literally one specific part of that last upward push. So I've done 7 reps that actually felt pretty good, pretty comfortable. And then I go down on the 8th one and I get to a sticking point and I can't do it. And boom, I'm done. And there's almost no, I don't know if I should use the word pain, but it's like I couldn't do it. It's over. And you don't feel sore. You don't feel like you really spent that much, because the first 7 weren't even challenging. When you do the reps the way you're describing, between 60 and 120 seconds, by the time you get to the second to last rep, you are really starting to feel the burn, but not only at that one sticking point, throughout the entire rep, up and down. I'm just trying to make sure people understand what you're talking about, because um, I guess I can tell you that until I actually went through the process the way you're describing it, I couldn't picture what that would be like. And I will also say that a lot of people, I think, are afraid to take your approach, partly because of an ego reason, because you're not going to be able to use whatever the number is. Say you were going to use 200 pounds on a given weight, whatever the exercise was, and now we're going to go and use the method that PD is describing. You're not going to be able to use 200 pounds and go slow for 2 minutes or even 1 minute. So there's ego involved. Now assure people, PD, that when they do this approach with the much lighter weight, they not only are getting as much benefit with a lighter weight, but they're getting probably significantly more benefit, correct?
Right. Like I said, it's not, well, for one thing, I wanted to comment on what you said about the ego part, right? This high intensity training is not ego friendly. You certainly will not, I mean, almost certainly will not be shifting around the kind of weights that most of those gym bros are using. It's just that much harder. And so, but by going to failure, you have recruited all those muscle fibers and done your utmost to stimulate growth of the muscle. So, that's, I think when a lot of people, and this was the case with me when I started high intensity training, you go through a workout and you think, well, gee, was that it? Didn't seem like all that much because I wasn't doing multiple sets of everything, this kind of thing. And, it took a little while, not long, but it took a little while to, realize, well, I wasn't really getting to failure.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to failure is giving it your utmost. So you just it is better than, let me put it this way. I want to say that it's better than conventional training, and it is better in many ways. But any kind of training program, if you do it hard enough and long enough and consistently enough and progressively will get results. Okay. So what we want to do is pick the safest and most efficient method of training, and that's high intensity training. So you absolutely do get the same results with this. There've been many bodybuilders that have done this. Like, so Dorian Yates is another one, big example there. So he was Mr. Olympia for several years there, and he trains in a high intensity method. And he's another, one that popularized this. So yeah, it is the safest and most efficient and effective way to train, definitely.
I want to take this opportunity to let people know one place where they can find you. I know you've got a website, pdmangan.com. Is there anywhere else where you prefer people to find you? I know besides for your X account, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a great place to see what you're posting about. But that's Mangan 150 on X. Anywhere else, or is that pretty
Just
much
those two places? Yeah. pdmangan.com and Mangan 150 on X.
I also want to let our viewers, and we've got well over 500 people listening live, and I know that this recording will be on the iFix Hearts YouTube channel after the fact, so the numbers will continue to climb. But Dr. Ovadia asked me to post this link. Let me put this a little bigger. Anybody that wants to get a copy of the digital copy of Stay Off My Operating Table, all you have to do is go to ifixhearts.com/livestream and fill in your info there, and we will get you a copy of Stay Off My Operating Table, which is a great resource for anyone looking to improve their metabolic health. And we know how important that is. I know you talk about that a lot, PD. And you talk about nutrition, you talk about the factors people should look at. I wanted to go a little further, just back to the resistance training. Are there any factors that you see that separate the people who succeed with plans like the one you're suggesting versus the people that fail? It's only 30 minutes for the resistance training part, 30 minutes twice a week. But it's at a high level of intensity, so it requires some effort. It's not easy. What are the things that people struggle with most, and how can they get past that? Because this is important. We're talking about the rest of your life. If you're 50, the difference between having a good quality of life and a healthy quality of life with your kids, your grandkids, your spouse, your retirement, whatever it is. But what factors do you think are most important for success?
Well, I think the most important factor is consistency. So you want to be in the gym, often enough, not too often, but you can't go just once in a while. So with this kind of training, even once a week training can get results. So somebody who wants to succeed at it definitely has to be consistent in that sense. And then you have to be progressive in the sense that as you increase your strength, you want to increase the amount of weight or reps that you are doing on each exercise. The thing about high intensity training is that as long as you are going to failure, you are pushing up against the limits of your strength, your ability to move that weight. So you can always be making improvements, even years into the future. I would say that, most of my clients have pretty good results. I think that, the number, what would I want to say here? The number of people who are willing to exercise, just generally speaking, is greater than the number of people who are willing to change their diet. A lot of people like exercise. I mean, I've always liked it, whether I was running or working out in the gym, and a lot of people are like that. Because, basically, you just feel so good when you're doing it and so on. But changing the way you eat is different, because everyone around you, whether it's in your household or, coworkers or out there or wherever it is, they're all eating differently, and you got to change. And, the fact is, as far as junk food goes, people like that stuff, and they get addicted to it, or find it, at the very least, find it hard to leave alone. And so, that is the problem. And so I think that as far as success goes, that's probably a more important part, or that's a bottleneck for many people, is changing their diet.
And how long, say, I have personal experience. When I was 51, I weighed 278 pounds, and I wasn't able to do a pull-up. When you say, maybe some people aren't dealing with that much weight, but I know others are dealing with a lot more. What's a realistic time frame to start seeing results when you address these challenges head on? Like, say someone is serious about making challenges, and making changes, and they don't have any severe medical problem as of yet. What's a realistic time frame before you start to see the needle move and you start to feel like you're on the road to better things?
Well, in terms of weight loss, in terms of losing body fat, this can be pretty rapid. Somebody who's substantially overweight can lose 2, 3, even more pounds a week of body fat if they put their mind to it. I've had a few clients. I have a 16-week program. I've had a few clients that have lost 50 pounds in that time, because they just put their minds to it and they just did it. Now, building muscle is a slower process. However, if someone is new to training, never done this before, and they train hard enough and consistently and progressively, it's not uncommon to see someone put on 15, 20 pounds of muscle in the course of a year.
Wow.
Okay. So, it is slower, but you can start seeing results right away. My clients typically do see results fairly quickly. Many of my clients who, I get a lot of people who have done a lot of weight training. They're into it and everything, and they're having trouble losing the body fat and so on. And when I talk to them about this way of training and give them a training plan, and they start doing high intensity training, many of these people have said they can't believe how hard it was and how much harder it was than their old way of training. So it's really all about the difficulty, about how hard you work at it, and as far as putting on muscle.
Talk to me a little bit. I know I've seen your post about GLP-1s, and they're all the rage, and everybody's talking about them. And, I guess millions of people are probably taking them at this point. First of all, do you have any concerns about the drugs themselves? But I'm particularly interested in your thoughts about what weight loss could mean for people who should be focused on protecting their muscle mass. Are you concerned with people inadvertently mistaking weight loss for fat loss?
Yes. Some of these studies with the GLP-1 drugs show that, what was the figure? Up to 40% of the weight lost was muscle. And this really, when you think about it, it isn't too surprising, because it isn't even necessarily a direct result of the drug itself. What is going on basically with people who are taking these, at least this is my take, is that people have been eating a lot of junk food all along, and that's why they're overweight. And then they start taking Ozempic or some other Wegovy, whatever, some other GLP-1 drug. Now they're eating a lot less food, but it's the same junk as before. And so they're not getting enough protein. They're not getting good nutrition. and they're also not doing resistance training. So whether it is or isn't a direct result of the drug itself, this method of weight loss is almost guaranteed to do that. It is common for people to lose muscle when they lose weight, and that's one reason why, like with my clients, I have everyone, young or old, man or woman, do resistance training. Some are more, some have a higher priority of putting on muscle, and that's great. Some have a lower priority of putting on muscle, like say, typical, say 60-year-old woman typically doesn't have a high priority of adding a lot of muscle, and that's fine, but they still need to do resistance training to prevent muscle loss as they lose weight. So everybody needs to do this. No matter how you go about trying to lose weight, you should be doing resistance training, or you're going to lose muscle. And that's not good for metabolic health. Muscle is a highly metabolically active organ. It makes up a large fraction of our weight, and generally, other things equal, the more muscle you have, the better your metabolic health. So you want to have muscle. So as far as the GLP-1 drugs goes, I mean, some people have said, well, if they were coached, like people taking these drugs, if they were coached to eat more protein and do resistance training, they wouldn't lose the muscle when they lost the weight. And that may very well be. However, if they were eating more protein and doing resistance training, they probably wouldn't need the drugs in the first place. Right.
Perfect. So that's a perfect segue. Curious, PD. When you mention protein, do you have any thoughts on how much protein an individual should be trying to get in? Because I think that from what I've seen, there's a lot of people who are severely under consuming protein. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think.
Absolutely. A lot of people are severely under consuming protein. So I give protein guidelines to my clients, but generally speaking, the recommended daily allowance for protein that with the government guidelines and so on is way too low. So by increasing that, the RDA by 50% or more, people can preserve muscle mass, or when they're doing resistance training, build that muscle. Yeah, I see this, that people are not consuming very much protein. In my opinion, a good protein source should be the center of every meal. And furthermore, protein has the effect of decreasing your appetite. So when people get more protein, they basically eat less, and so they can lose weight that way. So yeah, it is very important that there's been kind of a fad, I guess, in the last year or two, about people talking about a lot more protein. There's protein bars and various protein supplements, and foods will advertise this is high in protein and everything. Well, leaving aside, okay, there's protein bars that aren't so great and that sort of thing, but leaving that aside, this fad, if you want to call it that, is totally a good thing. And now you see from the same media outlets, for example, that are they're trying to tell us that ultra processed food is just fine. And then now they're also saying, yeah, this whole protein thing, you don't need that much protein and all that. Well, they're basically wrong. It's very difficult to get too much protein, maybe even impossible. I mean, there was one study where they got these youngish, resistance trainees to consume. They ended up consuming over the course of a year like 3.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is like super high. They had to use all kinds of protein supplements to get up to that number, because it's just basically impossible to do that if you're just eating regular whole food. Anyway, their lab results were all normal. Everything was fine. Their body composition was great. You know, couldn't find anything. So it's difficult to impossible to get too much protein.
Do you have a particular like target or estimate for what a person should be getting who's doing resistance training and trying to build muscle?
Yeah. So you know, basically, you know, 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that's a little under 8/10 of a gram per pound. Is about enough to maximize the resistance training gains. There are some studies that show up to 2 grams per kilogram or more can even push that further. That could be even better. I think for most people, that 1.6 or maybe up to 1.8 grams per kilogram would be good for resistance training. The other thing is, though, that as far as the effect on appetite goes, that it, as far as I can see, the effect on appetite increases almost without limit. Another thing is that you want to think about what is lean body weight, lean body mass, or ideal body weight, right? So somebody who weighs 300 pounds is not going to want to follow that rule of, you know, 1.8 or 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, because, well, you know, most of what they're carrying on their body is fat mass, and that doesn't need the protein. So you want to think about what is their ideal body weight or their lean body mass.
So it sounds like, you know, you said 0.8 grams per pound of.
Right.
Anyway, we are back. My connection cut out. I apologize. I don't know if PD can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. My connection cut out. So that's the unpredictableness of live streams. But I'm back. Thanks for bearing with me.
No
So
worries.
so we were talking about protein, and I think that you know, you said some numbers with kilograms, 0.8 uh, 0.8 grams of protein per desired body weight in pounds is reasonable. I think at Ovadia, you know, sometimes we use 1 pound per desired, but there's a range, and you don't have to be real specific on the target as long as you get enough.
Right.
And of course, some people are getting so little. You know, like if they weigh 200 is their ideal body weight, and we find that they're getting less than 100. So it doesn't even really matter if they move up towards 150. They're going to make some big potential gains, and then you can continue to tweak and evaluate as you go. I want to make sure sure that I post the links again. This has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time, PD. Your website, pdmangan.com, and Mangan150 on X are great places to find PD. I know he has a thriving coaching business, and he helps people get fitter and more resilient and healthier for those years to come that so many of us, you do the right things with your career, you get yourself set with finances, and it really is unfortunate when you're not able to enjoy what you've built because your health is poor, your fitness is poor. There's things to be done, and it would be great to be able to optimize those years. And that's really the same philosophy that we have at Ovadia Heart Health. And of course, if you want to reach out to PD, go to pdmangan.com. If you'd like to get a free copy of Dr. Ovadia's book, the digital download of Stay Off My Operating Table, go to ifixhearts.com. ifixhearts.com/livestream, and you can get the digital version of this book. PD, is there anything that you'd like to leave people with? I know you have an inspiring message, effective and actionable tools and posts that you make on X every day. Anything that you think that the typical person who has become complacent and doesn't have hope for getting the kind of life that you're building for your clients, what the next steps should be?
I think that most people underestimate the importance of their diet to their health, and that I think that many problems people have, whether it's simply being overweight or whether there are more complex health problems, will respond to diet, and also, of course, losing weight also often helps those other health problems. Metabolic health is just the most important thing. As you know, as I think you mentioned earlier, I'm 70 years old, and I'm very interested in the whole anti-aging space, longevity, life extension. Metabolic health is just the absolute most important thing there. People talk about, there are a lot of advancements being made in discovering what we can do about aging and so on, and that's all great and everything, but metabolic health is just absolutely the most important thing. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Building muscle, having a good amount of muscle mass as you get older, having good insulin sensitivity, all these things are just, which goes along with a relatively low level of body fat. All these things are just very important. And so if you want to take care of your health, you should be looking at those things. And if you want to live a long time, you should be looking at those things.
Oh man, that's great. You really filled this. We guess we're 53 minutes into this. We've got more than 700 people listening.
Wow.
You've given us great actionable steps. I hope everybody considers the importance of some of the things that PD has been sharing with us. Resistance training, it doesn't matter where you're at today. If you're a man or a woman, if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or even beyond. I know people in their 80s and 90s who are still doing it. And I also know, unfortunately, people in their 50s who have given up and are in a really bad place. So you're not defined by age. You're defined by maybe your attitude and your willingness to put in the effort to make a difference. Any parting words that you'd like to share, PD?
It's just so important. Fix your diet, fix your exercise, and you can be healthy. And chronic disease or being overweight it doesn't have to happen. It is within your control.
Excellent. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for coming on and sharing your knowledge with our listeners.
My pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Okay. You too.
Thanks everybody for joining.